welcome back to the shed. In this episode we're going to work on getting the XJ back on the road. We've been doing a bit of research and we're close. There's a few things that we do need to do though. Here is the basic list of things that a bike in New Zealand needs to be fit for driving on the roads. Mudguards, check. Headlight, check. Working speedo, check. Safe steering, check. Stoplight at the back, check. Good tyres, check. Indicators, check, those are good. An exhaust, check. However, this one is a little bit dicey. They do say that they need some kind of muffler or silencer, which we currently don't have. I'm gonna see how we go. I'll take it with this exhaust and see what happens. So with all of that, we've got a good chunk of the way there. So we now need to tackle the things that we don't have. So the first one is a working horn. It's all wired up, it's just a matter of getting a horn on there, which is cool. The next one is some kind of rear view mirror. I've got some bar end mirrors that we'll put on, but there'll be a little bit of work to the current grips to get those to work. A reflector on the back. We need good brakes. Keyword good. The rears are fine, the front is still very spongy, so we need to try and bleed those correctly so that we've got a good responsive front brake. We need footrests. In New Zealand, if you have space for a pillion passenger, then there must be suitable footrests for that person. So we need to sort those out. And the very last one on the list is we need a position light. I have no idea what that is, but I'll read the fine print in the kind of WAF manual and double check that. And the last one is a white number plate light at the back so that our beautiful old school number plate here can be lit for all to see. And as far as the number plate and the tail tidy goes, I'm going to just go with what I've got, which I don't love because it covers some of the detail at the back of the bike. And so I'd really like to mount it on the side by the shock and have that be the way that we do it. It looks cooler. I just need to check on the legality of that in New Zealand. So with all of that listed out, let's get cracking on some of these jobs. Looking down the list, there's a few we can tackle straight away. So things like, well, actually a lot of these we can tackle straight away. We might start with putting the footrests on because I want to paint those black. So let's do that first so the paint can dry and then we can tackle some of the jobs. Cool. Here are the original footrests for this stage of the project at least. I actually don't mind these. They look quite nice on the bike, really. But for this stage, we are going to take these off, these old footrests. They're pretty crusty. Then we will clean them, scuff them up with some sandpaper, primer, paint. Okay, with those doing their thing, let's move our attention on to the next item on the list, which I think we'll probably do the horn next. Yeah, let's do the horn. I actually think this horn came on this bike, and it's pretty cool. I'm really hoping this works. Let's just plug it in, and we're kind of testing two things here. Well, one, the horn, and also that this wiring still works. As we know from previous episodes, my memory of what wiring was complete and not. It's a bit dicey. So let's just put that there for now, and let's press the button and see what happens. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's working. Ooh, cool. Easy. Bolt that on somewhere and where we go. Okay, so with the horn kind of done, we can turn our attention to the next item on the list, which is rear view mirrors. So we've got this one, and there's another one around somewhere over here. This one is missing part of the collet thing here, so we need to suss that out. But yeah, I think we're going to rock these. What that entails is modifying the grips here so that we can take them through the end. So this kind of thing I think needs to slide that way and have this this part hollowed out a bit. So something like that. Cool, so I've got these mirrors here, and you can see this one has an inner collet and an outer collet, and that one works beautifully. This one here, I'm not sure what happened, obviously I've lost it, but it's missing its outer collet. So we need a new outer collet, and it just so happens to be that I have this piece of aluminium tube. Aluminium? Anyway, it's almost exactly what I need. So I just need to cut a piece of that length and put some little notches in it, and away we go. Cool, so these collets came out alright. Well, this collet I should say. These look alright as far as being very similar. There's obviously the original. There is the made one. It'll be fine. We need to start thinking about how we're gonna get rid of this situation here. So obviously our grips need modifying so that they have a larger hole here for the actual collet piece here to slide inside of. Through a combination of drilling and cutting, I think I'm going to hog this out and then figure out if we need to move this whole thing kind of further in on the bar to get it to fit. So let's give that a crack. So with that done, 1 and 2, this is all kind of working quite nicely. Next thing on the list is, after rear view mirror, we've got the reflector on the back, and we might as well tackle the reflector and the indicator light at the same time. And it just so happens today the lights turned up, which is pretty cool, from everyone's favorite motorcycle store. So we've got the reflector, that to do, and then after that it's basically sorting out the cooler, the brakes, the footrests, and we're ready to go for a WOF. Let's crack on. So I might have mentioned that ultimately I'd like to avoid having this here. My biggest concern really is that by putting it there, it's kind of blocking a little of the detail of and sort of takes away from having this kind of like clean rear mudguard situation. So we'll put it here for now, and then down the line we'll probably look at some kind of sort of side mounted situation, whatever that might look like. So for now what we're going to do is pop this on here, and then these 2 bolts are going to get replaced by those lights. And then we also need a reflector, which I think I'll probably just put through one of these holes down here, maybe this one in the corner. It doesn't need to be anything flash. Ultimately when I get to that point of kind of side mounting it, I'll think a little bit more carefully about where the reflector and all that kind of stuff goes, but for now we're just trying to get the job done, so let's get on with that. Okay, so from here we'll just ground out the black wires, common ground here at the back, and then these will connect up to the orange wire coming off the M unit. Cool, I've actually just kind of like raced through a bunch here without filming it, but I've kind of connected up, well I've connected all this stuff up. It's a bit of a hodgepodge, but it's going. So we can turn on the bike, they don't come on, and when you turn the lights on then the whole situation lights up, which is cool. It's so easy. The 2 negatives back to the shared ground, the positives just running forward and connected up, job done. We are left with footrests, which we have underway, good brakes, so that's just bleeding the brakes a bit more I think. Oh, we need to put the reflector on, let's do that. Cool, another job done. So really we are down to footrests and brakes, and we are ready to roll. Okay, it's been a few days. We went on a nice trip to Christchurch. It was great. Got to see my sister's new house, which is pretty cool. While the wife and the baby are out on a little afternoon trip, I thought I would quickly see if I can get some paint, sand these guys and get some paint on them. So all we need to do is get these sorted, get them back on the bike, which we'll still need hardware for, bleed the front brakes properly, and we should be good to go. Let's crack on. Right, so with all of that wrapped up, we're going to move on to the brakes. And I realized last night that I had made a mistake, and maybe this is why they're not working very well. I was reading the workshop manual, and it turns out that, and this is the wording I think they use, under no circumstances should you use anything other than .3 brake fluid. I checked the brake fluid that I'd put in, yeah, .4, so that's no bueno. So what we're going to do is try out a process that I found on the XJ forums online, whereby we take some .3 brake fluid and we throw it in a syringe and we feed it from the caliper up to the handlebar instead of the other way around. The theory being that the bubbles want to move up, and so if you're pushing the fluid in from the bottom, then the bubbles just go up and everything's good. We'll see. They reckon that you still need to do a little bit of work after that. Maybe you can even use some vibrations with like an orbital sander or something to try and get all the air out of the system. So we're going to try, but these are notoriously difficult to bleed, these bikes, for some reason. I'm not sure why, but we're just going to have to push on until we get it working. Let's get cracking. So just doing that has pushed the fluid up into the bowl, but I'm finding when I pump the handle I'm getting no positive brakes, so I think we need to carry on. So the brake bleeding has not gone well. It's a few days later and I've moved on to a different job because the brakes have been frustrating. Tried a few things, hasn't really worked out. I'll have to just carry on thinking about that. Footrests, last thing to do aside from the brakes. So went to the bike shop, really wanted to replace these guys, the old footrests, but turns out they didn't really have much in stock. So we're going to carry on rocking these and have a look on the old interwebs and see if we can find something to replace these. Quick Smart, or, well, they're fine, they do the job. Let's crack on. Oh, very retro. Love for them just to be small. Beep. Okay, so progress made on the brakes actually. I decided to kind of go back to basics and start bleeding them from the calipers. Down here you can see paint's no good, but it's also covered in brake fluid. But anyway, this is another sort of thing that I'll eventually get to sort of fully replacing the system. But you can see we've got bubbles in here now, and I've actually found that it's all been in the angle of the handlebars and kind of flicking this. I seem to get a bit of vibration into the master cylinder, and we've got more bubbles coming up. I don't know whether this is to do with having bled from the bottom as well. It seems, I don't know, maybe just getting a bit of fluid through the system has dislodged all of this, and so it's coming up even though I was kind of like going from the bottom. But this is a lot firmer now, which is really satisfying. I think there's some work to be done to get it a little bit better, but at least now I have a technique, so let's push on. Okay, it's time to check back in because I've just kind of, I don't know, I've just been doing stuff without the camera. Sometimes when you've got an annoying job to do, like the wiring, it's easy just to crack into it. I had some problems with the rear here. I had some issues with the current from the various wires, particularly around the back two lights were sort of bleeding into each other. Read the manual of all things, and it turns out the rear stoplight should not be connected to the light circuit, so it's not the same circuit as the headlight, for example. It should be in the auxiliary out. And it also led me to discover another problem I'd created for myself, which was having the coil wire and the rest of the ignition circuit split across the ignition output and the auxiliary 2 output. And that was meaning, I'm assuming that it was never going to start on the first push because I think auxiliary is turned off until it's running or something like that. So anyway, we solved some gremlins just by following the instructions. Okay, well, it's time for a bit of a side quest. Had a bit of a fuel leak going on, and the keen-eyed among you will spot the problem right now. But of course I didn't see that, so we went through a fair bit of effort and time dismantling stuff until, yeah, you just see that it's the hose. So, good times. Easily fixed. Right on. Managed to fix it. I've just had the bike running for a wee bit, and as we can see, no gushing fuel, which is a great improvement. Cool, so I just went for another ride after getting the carbs and everything sorted, and I learnt a few things. One, don't get so excited about going for a ride that you forget to put a bit of extra gas in the tank, because then you run out of gas halfway up the hill, you live on a hill, and you have that panic moment where it's like, how am I going to get home? So some other things are that we've got a small oil leak from the side underneath one of the gaskets. I think it's a pretty common thing where on the cam cover gasket you've got one end where there's sort of a machined half circle out of the case, and that gets filled with part of the gasket. And for some reason they often fail, so I think it's a pretty common practice to put some sealant in there. So we'll do that. We will get the tank buttoned on, all of that kind of stuff. But there's one big elephant in the room, and that is how loud it is. It's too loud. It's genuinely too loud. I'm a fan of, like, you know, a loud bike, but it's too loud. So I'm going to go hunting for a bit of a baffle for that exhaust because it's just too much. So that means we probably won't get it in for the planned WOF tomorrow. It's not booked in or anything like that, so we can kind of just go with the flow. But the goal was to get it ready for tomorrow, which it's not going to make now, so it's one of those things where I could try it on, I could take it down there and I could try and get a WOF as is, but I'm reasonably sure it's going to fail on that muffler, so we need to deal with that. What's one extra day, you know? What's one extra day when you're this close after all this work? It's just another day. All right, so I think actually we might leave that one there. I know that I said that we were going to get the bike legal in this video, but it turns out that there was actually a lot more to get done than I had anticipated. So we have made good progress. We've sorted out lots of stuff, and in the next one, I promise, it will be when we actually get the thing sorted. So please stick around, subscribe, like the video, would be a huge help, and hopefully we can get this thing back on the road very soon. We can go do some zoomies around Lower Hutt.